This is the dip joint, this is the pip joint. They both do flexion and extension. Flexion, extension. This is the only actions that they do, so they are a uniaxial joint, and the movements occur along the sagittal plane, and each of these is a synovial hinge joint. These are the metacarpal phalangeal, or the big knuckle joints. There are two movements that occur, which are flexion and extension, and these happen on the sagittal plane. They also do abduction and adduction along the coronal plane, and is a biaxial and a convolute joint.
Two sets of action occur at the wrist: flexion, extension, which both occur along the sagittal plane, then abduction and adduction, which occur on the coronal plane. The joint is biaxial and it is a condyloid joint. So again, you have flexion, and two muscles that contract to do flexion are the flexor digitorum and the flexor carpi ulnaris. Then you have extension. Two muscles that do that are extensor digitorum and extensor carpi ulnaris. You have abduction. Two muscles that do that are the flexor carpi radialis and the extensor carpi radialis. You have adduction, and two muscles that do that are flexor carpi ulnaris and extensor carpi ulnaris.
There are two actions that occur with the forearm. It's pronation and supination. To start, you start in an anatomical position and turn your palm down to do pronation. And then to supinate, you're going to move your arm to where your palm is up. The synovial joint that the radioulnar joint is the pivot joint. And on a human, this would be pronation going to supination, and supination going to pronation. In a neutral position, going to pronation, and then in a neutral position, going to supination. The name of the muscle that pronates and supinates is brachioradialis.
Two actions occur at the elbow: flexion and extension. The elbow joint is a synovial hinge joint that is uniaxial. When the hand is supinated and you flex the elbow, the biceps brachii is contracting to do this action. When your hand is in a neutral position and you flex your elbow, the brachioradialis is one of the main muscles involved. If your hand is pronated and you flex your elbow, the brachialis, which is deep to the biceps of the elbow and is the true elbow flexor, always has to contract when flexing the elbow, no matter what position the forearm is in. But it gets more help from the biceps and the brachioradialis when you are supinated or neutral. When you extend your elbow against resistance, one muscle that helps to do elbow extension is the triceps brachii.
So the three sets of actions of the shoulder, you have flexion and extension, which go across to the sagittal plane. You have the abduction and adduction, which go across the coronal plane, and you have medial and lateral rotation that go across the transverse plane. So she's going to flex her arm first, and the two muscles that help flex the arm are the deltoid and the biceps brachii. And the deltoid is here, the biceps brachii is here, and now she's going to extend her arm, and the two muscles that help extend are the deltoid and the triceps brachii. Deltoid is here, triceps brachii is here, and now she's going to adduct her arm, and the two muscles that adduct are going to be your latissimus dorsi and your teres major. So teres major is going to be along the back, latissimus dorsi is also going to be on the back. Now she's going to abduct the arm, and the two muscles that do that are the deltoid and the supraspinatus. So your deltoid is here, and supraspinatus is on the back as well. And now she's going to laterally rotate her arm. And the two muscles that help laterally rotate are your deltoid and your teres minor. So deltoid is here, and your teres minor is along the back. And now she's going to medially rotate, and the two muscles that help with that are the deltoid and the pectoralis major. So the deltoid is here, and the pectoralis major is on the front. And your shoulder joint is a ball and socket joint.
Here you have the actions of the hip. The hip is a ball and socket joint. The actions are flexion and extension, adduction and abduction, and lateral rotation and medial rotation. So first she's going to flex her hip. Here you can see she is flexing her hip, and this goes along the sagittal plane. Some of the muscles include the rectus femoris and sartorius and TFL. The rectus femoris is along the front, the anterior thigh, the sartorius, and the TFL. Next, she's going to extend her hip, and this also goes along the sagittal plane. Muscles on this part include the hamstrings, which are the semitendinosus, semimembranosus, and biceps femoris, which are all on the posterior thigh. Next, she's going to adduct her hip, which we'll use a TheraBand to help demonstrate. As you can see, she is resisting against the band to adduct her hip. Muscles that are included in adduction go along the frontal and coronal plane. They include the gracilis, the adductor longus and brevis, and the adductor magnus. This is all along the medial thigh. Next, she is going to abduct. This also goes along the frontal or coronal plane, and muscles include the gluteus medius and the gluteus minimus, which are all back here. The minimus is also underneath the medius. Next, she is going to do lateral rotation, which goes along the transverse plane. Muscles for this are the gluteus maximus, which is also back here, and this is the largest muscle of the gluteus muscles, and also the sartorius. And last, she's going to medially rotate her hip, and this also goes along the transverse plane. These muscles include the gluteus medius and the gluteus minimus as well.
So right here we're going to have her extend her knee, and the four muscles that are involved are the vastus lateralis, the vastus medialis, the vastus intermedius, and the rectus femoris. And then we're going to have her flex her knee, and the four muscles that are involved in that are the semitendinosus, semimembranosus, bicep femoris, and the sartorius. And with the tibia, we're going to show you on the articulated skeleton, you'll see that the tibia slightly rotates out when the knee flexes and extends, and the knee joint is a condyloid joint.
There are 4 actions that are involved with the foot. The first is plantar flexion, and the muscles that assist with that are the gastrocnemius and the soleus. The second is dorsiflexion, and the muscles that help with that are the tibialis anterior and the extensor digitorum longus, which runs down into the toes of the foot. The third is inversion, and the muscles that help with that are the extensor hallucis longus, which runs down into the foot, into the big toe, and the tibialis anterior, which is here again. And then the last is eversion, which the muscles that help with that are the extensor digitorum longus and the fibularis longus. Plantar flexion and dorsiflexion both cross the sagittal plane, and inversion and eversion both cross the frontal plane.